is Nana Kay, and I would like to introduce you today to Joyce Foisto. She started a fascinating business called Boomers Social Media Tutor, helping baby boomers master a new concept, technology. So welcome, Joyce.
Hey there, it's great to be with you. I'm excited.
Well, back when you were growing up, where were you headed originally?
Well, I thought I was going to be a teacher. My mom was a teacher. Not my dad, excuse me, my grandpa was a teacher. My aunt was a teacher. I thought that's what you would do. I'm born in 1948, so I graduated high school in 67. And that was the common thing that people would do, teaching, nursing, if they were girls. Or otherwise, like secretary, work in retail, work in the family business. But professionally, I thought I'd be a teacher. So that's what I did. I thought. So I went to school for that. But then after student teaching and even after switching to a different topic, like from English to health, I found out that I'm too much of a free spirit to fit into the structure of bells and whistles. You strike me like that. And so please, you'll understand, I think, definitely.
Well,
So
you've pivoted several times. So tell us about the changes you made and why.
okay, so what happened is this. I would get directed to places. I don't know if this ever happened to you. People say, oh, Joyce, you should apply for that job as the public health educator with the city of Madison, Wisconsin's health department. And I would say, I don't have a master's in public health. And they say, do you know there's not a school of public health in Wisconsin? Probably there won't be other people with that degree anyway, so give it a shot. You have that master's in school health, that's close. I'm like, oh, okay. So I apply, and sure enough, I get hired. And I'm doing this job, and eventually it wasn't a fit. I just felt like it was a public information officer, and that part of it I liked, but it was more management. A lot of times, you know how you leave a manager and not a company or an entity, so there were issues there. So then I'd been on a board of a nonprofit, and I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll be a nonprofit agency director. That could be a good fit. So I go get yet another degree. That one the husband funded. The other one was a fellowship, and the first my parents did. So, you're thinking, how is she paying for all this education? So I get this other degree, and I try being on this nonprofit, running it. Well, the problem is you work all these hours, morning, evenings, you don't get paid a lot. And I'm like 30, early 30s, and the husband had been after me to have a baby. I mean, that sounds kind of funny, doesn't it? But I mean, he was always more interested in kids than me. So I said, okay, we'll do baby. And then I'm realizing this is not a good fit to be a mom with these kind of crazy hours and the slow pay. And plus, I was really interested in politics. And also, I thought, well, why not run for office? Somebody had encouraged me to do that. And then I was elected. So here I am working full time on the county board, and I'm pregnant. So, something's got to give. So I decided the easiest thing was to quit the job that wasn't really working out anyway. So that's just through my 20s. Again, those are just some examples of how I got into things. And later on, when I was a home mom and involved with the League of Women Voters, a guy with the county government saw that I was good at writing documents and would I like to help out this small town with this informational guide. So I kept getting led to these different things. Eventually, and started a whole business because of his idea. And then my minister said to me, oh, would you like to come and work for me as the administrative assistant? I said, really? I mean, being church secretary was never like on a resume of mine. But then I learned like WordPerfect. Remember that? You're old enough maybe to remember back in the 90s when computers replaced the typewriters. So you had to figure out what to do with this computer. So I worked for him for a year, and then we moved out to Colorado. And in Colorado, I was doing informational interviewing, and I fell into sales because this woman saw a salesperson in me in a 1-hour informational interview, offered me a job the next day being in sales with this Chamber of Commerce membership rep, official title. Led to a 17-year career. So if there's a pattern, it's like, I've left managers, and I won't name any, certainly, because I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook with some of these people. But at any rate, that just didn't work for me in that role. That's one reason I would leave. But another reason it was when it came clear that it just wasn't a fit for me. I hope that gives people some general idea.
Well, it does. And I think it gives us a good read on why people pivot. Sometimes it's like falling into something, or gee, that sounds interesting, and you kind of run over there and then you try it for a bit, not a fit. And I think that sounds like that's what's happened to you several times as you've gone along the path.
Right.
So what's your passion today? Is it your business?
Yes, it is. And it's such a lovely segue because just like one of the pivotal experiences of my life was when that lady in the informational interview said, I see salesperson in you. Have you ever thought of sales? And I go, no. And then 17 years later, I was still in sales. And at my last sales job, now what happened is my manager, when we rolled out social media in 2010, saw that I was the best person, and get this, at 61, mind you, at getting our clients, there were students actually at this college, engaged with the social media. I mean, like to follow us on our Facebook page or on Twitter or join a LinkedIn group. I had been on social media, mostly Facebook and LinkedIn actually, starting around 2008, 2009. And so I could talk with these people on a very basic level about how much I was getting out of social media and why it'd be a good idea for them to hear from the college through these different channels. And my manager, who was 35, and I'll say loved me, who really, even though I wasn't a star player on his team, I hit my numbers. And he would say to me, Joyce, I think that as I hear you, you have a knack for explaining that social media. Have you ever thought of helping other people your age, your baby boomer age group, to understand social media like you do? Honestly, for that one, I say God just spoke through bread in the sky. The clouds parted and the angels sang. I mean, now in retrospect, I probably overstating it slightly, but seriously, that was a pivotal moment in my life. And it gave me the idea for this business. So my passion is not exactly my business, just to have a business, but more that I can have a platform, that I can help to educate people, not just the olders, though mainly that's who I help, but people of all ages on LinkedIn in particular. I do a lot of speaking and training as well as one-to-one tutoring. So I think it's that educator in me really has always been there, and it gets to come out in this other way that really fits me.
And isn't it funny that we started out as the teacher mentality because that was what was available, at least from our mother telling us all those years ago, and here we are today doing it.
I think my mom would get a kick out of what I'm doing these days if she was alive. Yeah, that'd be so cool.
So your primary clients are baby boomers, or so that's let me think. Baby boomers are about what age? What's that?
Well, now the youngest turns, let me do the math of this. So they're born between 48 and 64. So the youngest boomer is turning 57 years old in 2021 when we're doing this podcast. So sometimes to keep it simple, I'll say 55 and up, or even 50 and up. Like the older Gen Xers, they struggle too. They didn't necessarily grow up with computers, and certainly not with social media. Like my daughters who are in their 30s. Okay, so they were in high school and college when, say, Facebook came out. So they're much more tuned into that world, the millennials. Even they're but the older millennials will remember like landlines and, things like that, right? That when phones had cords on them. So they remember kind of pre-internet days even. So it's interesting. But mostly I help people, I would say, in their 50s, up into their 60s, 70s, even slightly older than boomers. But I would say that's the main age group.
Well, what do you think is the biggest challenge in learning social media? And I suppose we could go on for 5 hours on this.
Oh, yeah. I think there's so many different ones, and it's that overwhelm factor. And you see people on LinkedIn, you see them, or any social media, and doing it a lot. So the older people think they have to be on social media all the time, and they just don't have time for that. So when they just say, I don't do social media. Well, the thing that's a problem with that is something like LinkedIn, which is my big thing I usually train on, is so different in its experience and the culture and what people talk about than all the other social media. So I think one of my biggest, there's the question about challenges, is it helps to help people sort of parse that out. To say, here's LinkedIn, and LinkedIn does this, and here's Facebook, Instagram, whatever, and they're different. So I think that is the challenge, to help people who kind of want to be involved with social media, but just don't know where to start, or in that overwhelmed phase.
And so I'm hearing you say, and I've heard other people say this, you're almost better to just focus on one when you start.
One or maybe two. Yeah, depending on where your clients are. That's the biggest thing. If you have a business of your own, let's say, who we're speaking to that, or who your competition is, where they're showing up, a combination of that. But I think especially your clients, because there's no point for me, for example, to be active on Twitter when a lot of people over 55, unless there's some sort of a news nut of some kind, or into sports or celebrities, those people would be on Twitter. But the average person who's, say, 55 and older isn't doing much with Twitter, or even Instagram in general. That's a younger crowd.
And probably really not TikTok.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking about TikTok. Yeah. Although it's a fun platform, but it's not one that I even have an account on, at least not yet. Maybe someday.
And then the new one, Clubhouse. Are you doing anything?
Oh, I'm on Clubhouse. Yeah. Clubhouse is interesting, though, because it's a really different format. It's on your phone. It's invite only right now. I have been on one program where I was helping out a lady who does a lot of Clubhouse. And just so people know, Clubhouse is really interesting if you want to hear about kind of latest trends, almost TED Talk type speakers, and have a chance to kind of rub elbows with them, so to speak, through this audio app. It's pretty interesting.
Interesting. So how do you go about teaching your clients the basics? What's your methodology?
Well, I'll use LinkedIn as an example. So I do a couple different things. First off, I will send them an ebook that I wrote on 9 ways to stand out on LinkedIn. So they can watch these videos and read the text and try some things out on their own. So that's a kind of a do-it-yourself approach. Secondly, I have a list of topics that we frequently cover. So then they come in to even know kind of an agenda that we have. When we're sitting together virtually like this or in person, I'll start at the top with the LinkedIn profile, and we go through step by step by step by step. And if there's a section they haven't added, I'll show them where you add it. That's usually one session. Then in another session, I would go into more of the user experience. Here are the settings. Here are places you can adjust your settings. And in most cases, you don't have to go back and ever change them, except for maybe 1 or 2. Here are the notifications. This is what you do with notifications. Here is the searching function. Here's how you search. Here are what are called filters to help you narrow your search. Here's where you post. Here's how you post on LinkedIn. Here's how you comment. Again, a lot of this parallel to, say, Facebook. Here's how you share. Then I take screenshots from my own, and if needed, or from theirs, and I will put that into a Word document that I email them along with the invoice. And these are, like, I'll call them crib notes. So people can go back and review what we covered. Sometimes if they want, I can even do a recording like we're doing here for our podcast. I'll record the session for them on Zoom, and they can go back and watch it if that helps them. So that's how I approach it, is really very step-by-step, break it down.
So Joyce, how do you market your services?
Well, partly because I'm an extrovert, is I network. So I have found that by even with Zoom and doing things virtually, I get business because people meet me and they're interested in what I have to offer, or they know somebody who needs my services. So here in the Denver area, I'm involved in several different business networking organizations. So historically, that's where I've gotten at least half of my business, in part. And then along with that, I've been doing some speaking and training, like I mentioned earlier. That is a great way for me to show how I operate. People get a feeling for my dynamic, how I explain things, and they think, oh man, that was really interesting. I'm going to have to tell my friend about Joyce. So speaking engagements are probably in the 30% of one, at least an aspect of how I get my business in terms of the marketing. Of course, I get a lot by referral. I've been doing this 8 years, so, but that's not exactly, marketing per se. Then I have a newsletter with about 1,800 people on it. I send that out once a month. I've gotten things, certainly clients from that. And I would say my posts too on LinkedIn, and also just, this isn't exactly marketing, but when you engage with people, kind of schmooze with them. Oh my gosh, Nan, has it been 10 years since you started your podcast? I'm just making that up. Then I do that through notifications, and it keeps me abreast of people. It keeps me top of mind. So those are all some things that come to mind. I had some other notes on that. I think those are the main things.
So do you do your speaking mostly on Zoom now, or are you doing it starting in person?
Almost entirely on Zoom yet.
Okay. So what do you feel is maybe one of your biggest challenges in operating your business?
Balancing between my volunteer commitments, mostly in Toastmasters, speaking and leadership organization, and my business commitments. And I have a little grid where I have all these things I'm doing each week. And I think it's saying, okay, so-and-so can wait. I don't have to do that today or even tomorrow. Maybe I'll do it Friday or over the weekend. So getting a sense of, it's broadly time management in a way, but it's also energy management. And it's where you show up. I don't need to go to that meeting. I can drop that group, whatever it might be. And I think I have this natural tendency to go into leadership. So when I join a group, I don't just hang out in the group. Pretty soon I'm some kind of officer in it. So I'm sure my joking line is, I'm sure there's a 12-step group called Leaders Anonymous, of course, and I'd want to be president of that. Ha ha, right? So that's one of my tricky things, is to know when to step away completely from a group. And that is not, it's related to business maybe, but it's still taking away valuable time that I could be devoting to a client or business development.
Yeah, that's very good advice, because it is hard to keep all the balls in the air all the time. It really is. So tell us about one of your surprises along the way. What kind of went, oh my gosh, to you?
Well, in life in general, I have been pleasantly surprised by how much I love being around millennials. Of course, I have daughters in that age group, so I'm inclined toward that. But yet I'm in this Toastmasters club, the speaking and leadership group, mostly millennials. I jokingly say I'm more millennial than some millennials. And they're so much fun, the energy and the liveliness and everything about them I like, and I learn from them. So sometimes I think, wow, I'm supposed to be the older, wiser one, but oh, that was really very interesting point she brought up there. I'm going to look at that. So that is one. And another is, I've been so pleasantly surprised when people who are far more evolved in their LinkedIn life will find me on LinkedIn and ask me to connect. And that is so rewarding to me, that I would pop up somehow as, you might want to know this woman, probably is how they found me, I guess, or maybe in a search they did. So that's led to some wonderful collaborations with other people in my field. I mean, recently I was on a LinkedIn Live, get this, Nan, with a lady named Bonnie Biafor, who has written over 30 LinkedIn learning courses. She is literally a LinkedIn learning rock star. Millions of people have looked at her courses, have read her courses, have enrolled in her courses. She's right here in the Denver area. Oh my gosh, she found me on LinkedIn and we're like sisters already. So that's a pretty cool surprise.
When you look back, is there something you would have done differently?
In my life in general?
Well, whatever you want.
Or more in my business. I mean, I think everything happens for a reason. I know it's sort of a cliche. And I love that Steve Jobs talk, to the 2005 class at Stanford, where he says to them, you can connect these dots backwards and everything builds on each other. That's such an inspiring talk. I think in my business, I perhaps would have studied business operations more, business, the money part, though I struggle sometimes with that, but I surround myself with good people that have helped keep me on track. So I don't owe the IRS money or things like that get in trouble with the law in various ways. So I think maybe I would have left certain organizations earlier. I tend to be extremely loyal to a group. I'm thinking about a leads group, a business networking group that I was pretty much the main person doing all the effort. And it was struggling. It has been struggling for probably a couple, 3 years. And I think in retrospect, I would have pulled the plug on that group or said to them, oh, let's pull the plug earlier. So that might be another one too.
And that's just kind of all part of time management, but you're right.
Yeah.
You're always balancing that against what you kind of feel is your obligation or your loyalty or
all of that. Yeah.
you want to phrase it. How about sharing with us your 3 most important lessons that you've learned?
Okay, I would say pace yourself. I think especially as we age, you got to really think about pacing yourself. What can you literally accomplish? What feeds you? And what time of day do you do well? I mean, it kind of all ties into a lot of things along that line. I think be open-minded. I could have just blown off my 35-year-old manager's observation back in 2010 about me and social media and older people. Like, oh, Brett, really? That I wouldn't be any good at that. So be open-minded. When someone says, have you ever thought of doing this? Actually, just at least give it a consideration. Look into it, do some research. Maybe that is something you could do. Maybe not, but be open-minded. And the third one is really to build on relationships, not to use people, but to be authentically engaged with them and appreciate them. So I think so many times it's the relationships that get us that next job. It isn't what you know, but who you know. So I think to really honor those and be appropriate and really love people. When you come across with good energy and a caring way, there's all kinds of quotes on all these lines, people pick up on that. So when you are your genuine self, people are drawn to you and you want to keep those relationships healthy and intact.
As you were talking, I was thinking about what is the best thing about being retired. And, that's in quotes, of course, because I work pretty much 6 to 6 every day, but I'm doing something I really like to do. But the point is, I think it's because we now have choices. And we just, as you think of your younger years and you're raising kids and you're working and all these things, you just don't seem to have as many options as you have when you retire. Have you found that to be true?
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. I don't really, like you, I don't think of myself as retired in kind of a traditional way because I think of myself as a business owner, really. Yet, because I am my own boss, I have all the flexibility in the world. I have choices. I'm going on vacation soon, spend time with family, and I can do that whenever I want. I don't have to ask months ahead, oh, can I take this time off? So that's great. Also, it can follow my own natural biorhythms. When I used to have to drive 17 miles from my home here in the suburb of Denver to another suburb of Denver and be there sometimes at 7 o'clock in the morning, mind you, that was a challenge, but I sucked it up and did it. Now I can get up comfortably, usually around 7:30 in the morning. I get up. That's my biorhythm. And I could work till 9, 10 o'clock at night because I've always been a night owl ever since I was a girl. So I can play to when I have the energy to do something. It's really neat. And I think, most importantly, I have this platform, as I was saying earlier, to really inspire other people, especially older. Now I'm 72, right? And it's so exciting to be an inspirational figure for people and say, wow, I want to be like you when I grew up or something. Maybe that's a little ego in me, but I bring something to them that they appreciate and they makes them think and they think, oh, that's cool. I could do that too.
Well, I think being an entrepreneur, of course, I've been one since 1980 or some dipping into it a little earlier.
Wow.
And there's a huge difference between being an entrepreneur of a large company versus being an entrepreneur in a small company. I personally really prefer the small company because it's the kinds of things you're talking about. You have so much more flexibility. The other company, which I'm still president of, has 4,000 employees. You can't know everybody, when you've got that many people, and you really don't have freedom in your life. But if you can be an entrepreneur, even in, after 50, you still be an entrepreneur, you've got so much choice when it's smaller. What have you
Yeah.
found about that?
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, you can have a bigger impact. For me, I've been like, there is no one that reports to me but me. So I'm not even a small business in the sense of like there's people. I mean, I have contractors of people that help me. So I think you have to figure out where you best operate. And I have, even when I was in sales, essentially you are your own boss. I mean, you have targeted numbers you have to hit, but how you structure your day and who you call when, depending, of course, on the time zone and such, if you're like I was inside sales, you can do that whatever pattern you want as long as you get your work accomplished. So I'm much more of, I will say also a leader versus a manager. There's a whole nother thing because if you have a company, you have to be good at managing, at directing people to do things. That is not my strong suit nearly at all. However, a leader is that bigger picture person, the person who's more the inspirer that really comes up with the ideas and help gets the other people on board. That's where I can shine. So I love the Strengths Finder. I don't know if you've used that much or know people have through Gallup. I have found that so enlightening and so validating. And it's interesting to see how my strengths, according to that tool, have changed over time. From back in '05 when I took it first, up until 14 when I took it right after I started the business, and even more recently in 18, 3 years ago. And how some always stay the same, like positivity, winning others over, communication. But others have come into the picture after I started my business, like maximizer or arranger or connector, number 6, that's right, almost in the top 5. So I have found those tools to be very helpful and help me see, yes, I am on track. What I do is a fit for who I am.
What would you say your biggest tip for women thinking about becoming an entrepreneur would be?
Well, don't quit the day job. Be the first thing. I think find ways to dip your toe into what you're doing. So take my own example. The manager gives me this idea. I take some classes. I read some books. I think, okay, maybe now I'm ready to create my own self-enforced internship program. So what does that mean? I would ask, let's say I would beg my friends from Toastmasters, again, that communication leadership group. I'd say, hey, could I practice with you on LinkedIn, give you some tips on your LinkedIn? Was there something wrong with my LinkedIn? Well, I don't know. We haven't sat down yet. I thought we could sit down and we could look at it and see what you think. So we'd get together over coffee. They'd bring their laptop. And again, I'm going with this rudimentary level of knowledge. Yet the more you do this, the better you get. And usually we'd find a few things that would help them improve their LinkedIn. Then they'd ask if they should be paying me. I said, no, remember, this was my idea. I don't want to drug you here. I need the practice. Well, then they'd say, could I do something? I said, well, you could write me a recommendation. I have like 257 recommendations or something, in part because I asked people from the get-go, would you write that? So I would say, find a way to dip your toe into that field. Volunteer if you can, if you financially could pull that off. Do loads of informational interviewing, because the entrepreneurial lifestyle has so many ups and downs. Depends who else is bringing money into your world. I mean, I have a husband of nearly 50 years. He's really the breadwinner and has been the whole time. So for me, the money I make with this isn't, it's incidental in a way. It's important to me, yet it isn't needing to pay the bills. Our house is paid off, things like that. So I think it also depends on what stage you are in your life and who you are responsible for. There's a lot of different factors, but those are just some of my thoughts.
Yeah, those are good thoughts, and it makes a lot of sense. You may have already answered this. So if you have, just add anything else you want to add. What do you like best about your entrepreneurial lifestyle?
Well, I think I'll reiterate the part about the fact that I have this flexibility, freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want. And I have this platform, this, especially through social media and through Zoom, to go all about the country, the world. I recently spoke to a Toastmasters club in England. Isn't that neat? On how they can use LinkedIn to promote their Toastmasters club and themselves as Toastmasters. What does that mean? I did that with a club in Miami. I've spoken to a business national, what is it, BNI, a BNI business networking group in Manhattan, all by Zoom. So for me, it's that opportunity to really help people to really understand LinkedIn and to also see that you can reinvent yourself at any stage of your life.
Well, this has been so much fun. I just like to keep talking to you, but I guess we better bring it to a close. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I think your family is so important. I oftenly joke that my husband of nearly 50 years is a low maintenance husband. So I'm not saying run out and get one of those with a pension, it's a pretty good combination. But I would say that it's important that your family's on board. I mean, at one point I thought about going into the ministry. No, that's kind of an entrepreneur in a way. You got an entity you're running, but then I realized that's such a 24/7, a lot of people calling you, things like that. Maybe I don't want my family interrupted in ways that you would have to be interrupted as a minister. So think about the other people who are impacted by your decision and respect their point of view. But on the other hand, don't let them dissuade you to go with something if you feel it's in your heart of hearts. Still, at least take a serious look at it. But I do think it's important, and I think it's important to have a support system around you.
Well, thank you so much. And we just wish you the absolute best with all. Have fun with everything you're doing.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, Joyce Feistel, Boomer Social Media Tutor. I'm a happy camper.